record on this computer. Yes, thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see the PowerPoint. Let's go that way. All right, so hopefully you can see the PowerPoint. I get some nods of heads. Yes, great, thank you. So today we're going to look at e-portfolios for learning. So if you're after anything Mahara related, that's in a different session, and Mari will be doing the next one of those on the 8th of August. Today it's just more about understanding what e-portfolios are and how they can be used and their uses and that sort of stuff, rather than looking at Mahara, which is our e-portfolio software, and showing you how to use that. So my slides help me. Today we're going to ask the question, there should be a question mark there. What are e-portfolios? We'll look at their uses, some of the benefits, and then where you can get some help and some resources on from that. So I found a very great resource, which is a book called The E-Portfolio Paradigm, Informing, Educating, Assessing and Managing with e-portfolios. So a lot of the stuff is coming out of chapter 1 of that particular book. So what do we understand by an e-portfolio comes back to an understanding of what we know of a portfolio. And if you've been around a little while, the portfolio was the artist's collection of examples of work, or the photographer's collection of examples of work, which they carried, big square rectangle thing, which they carried everywhere they went if they were trying to get work or get their art showed or whatever else. So we're looking at something very similar with e-portfolio. So it's an organised compilation of artefacts. Artefacts, as in the past, might be the art or the photos. So the documents, the images, the video files, the podcasts, all those sorts of things. Anything you can think of that could be called an artefact, or is available for somebody to store and use to show in a different context of what they've been doing and how they've been doing it type things. So these artefacts and this compilation of artefacts demonstrates knowledge, skills, values or achievements, and it articulates the relevance and credibility and meaning of the artefacts being organised and presented. So there's two things going on here. It's not just storing everything, it's about how you then present that back to your audience. Sorry about the coughing. That's what I get when I go to Adelaide. It gave me back a present, and the cough is lingering a little bit. So Paulson and Meyer in that quoted in that book indicate that a portfolio tells a story. It is the story of knowing, so what you know about things, knowing yourself, so the reflective aspects around what you did and maybe why you did them, knowing your audience, so who are you presenting this information to, and it talks about them being the students' own stories of what they know, why they believe they know it, what others should, and why others should be of the same opinion. A portfolio is an opinion backed by fact. I think that's what we want all our students to be doing, is in whatever assessment item, and students prove what they know with samples of their work. So that's a nice little way for me of putting it, that the portfolio should be telling a story. So why do we use these things? Well, for our students while they're studying, we could get them to use a portfolio to demonstrate competence. The nurses use a portfolio to show that the students need to show their competence against a series of standards from the nursing boards, whatever their current name is. So they get the students to put all that stuff together in a portfolio. It can show growth and understanding over time. So if you get them to start a portfolio in year 1 in a particular subject, by the time they get to year 3, you should see some growth and development in looking over that time. To develop, demonstrate and reflect on new knowledge. So as we add things or do things, we should be encouraging them to become reflective practitioners, so to speak. Be thinking about what they're doing and why they're doing it, what have they learned, how they can then use that in other contexts, those sorts of things. Show attitudes, knowledge and skills, demonstrate how inquiry works in practice. So understanding inquiry, asking the questions and all that goes around in inquiring about something and learning about something. And provide, as I've said, providing evidence of reflection. So while they're studying, it can be quite useful for the students to not just produce a report or whatever else, but the portfolio can help them start to understand themselves, what they know, why they know, and look at their own development as a long life learner, as a professional, developing professional attitudes, all of those sorts of bits and pieces. All right, from graduation and moving in through to the workforce, of course, if your profession requires you to have a license or gain registration, certainly the portfolio can be used for that. You can keep a record of what you're doing against the standards, how you've met that, how you can show competence, those sorts of things. Showcase your qualification and competencies, and critical learning and reflection purposes. So just because we finished university and we've got our piece of paper doesn't mean to say that we stop learning or we stop reflecting on what we're doing and where we're going and those sorts of things. So a portfolio after you graduate is helpful for maintaining that spot where you can keep reflecting on your life and your career and whatever else. Yeah, benefits. So let me just shut that window or you get breeze across the mic. So benefits. Creating a portfolio is an active learning process. You're always going to be learning, you're always going to be adding to it. So creating a portfolio, from our students' perspective, we should see them starting to be strategic planners. As in, we've got all this evidence or these artefacts, how are we going to pull all these together to show this particular audience, say our future employer, as opposed to a current employer who's looking at our career growth. So they're beginning to start those strategic planning skills. The acquisition and analysis of information. So as they add artefacts in, which they think are relevant, they should be thinking about, well, why are they relevant? What is it showing? How is it going to help in the situation I want? Processing and connection making. So again, linked to that acquisition and analysis of information. Synthesizing their ideas and how they're bringing the artefacts together. Designing the look and layout of their portfolio. So how is this look and feel going to be reflective of me and who I really am? And evaluation and self-reflection, or they will be developing those skills as well. So it's while we get them to put all these different artefacts in there, if we get them to look at portfolios as something broader than just, we told you to put it there, they can really develop some very good self-learning, some self-reflection, some general personal development skills and abilities while they're doing it. Oh, I knew this was going to happen. Talking too much now. It helps the students focus their thinking. If we can get them translating theory into practice, document learners' progress over time, and enhance communication and organisation skills, which links back to that other one around connection making, analysis of information. So all of those are the benefits which we can help students achieve if we use a portfolio. All right, next. So throughout, and as I've said, throughout the process of constructing a portfolio, they can gain a broader sense of what they're learning. So if, say, pick on health, actually I might pick on the accident and forensics guys instead. So if they're learning about how to use different tools in a accident situation for gathering evidence, all of those sorts of things, they can see how each of these pieces come together to form a big picture of the whole. They can see their own learning unfolding. So, okay, if at this point, say in year 1, and they look back in year 3 and say, oh, gee, I've learnt so much over that time, they can see their development, their own development over time. They can acquire an awareness of their own accomplishments. So if they're a student mentor, say, and they put that in their portfolio, well, what did they develop themselves in being a student mentor? You've got the leadership, you've got the communication, you've got all those other skills that you developed just purely as doing, taking the time out to volunteer and help others. And it highlights that the process is as or more important than the end product. So a lot of times we concentrate on the product, but if we're getting our students to develop their graduate attribute skills, so communication, literacy, problem solving, all those sorts of things, they're all part of the process. So highlighting the process is as important as the end product of the report which they just completed or submitted. And a lot of times we look at portfolios within a unit, within a single unit, because that's what we personally can control. But if we can implement a portfolio across a course, so there be strategic units throughout the time frame that they're studying with us in a course, where they're adding things to the portfolio, and they can add more in at other times if they want to. We can then start to see, we can see their growth and development, and they can see their growth and development. Whereas within units, it's a bit more difficult as to get that picture of development. But if we use it within units, we can get them thinking about how they personally have met their learning outcomes, and what pieces or artefacts have led them to that decision to say, yes, I have developed that skill of writing a cohesive report. So they can come back and look at that and see their own development of the learning outcomes and how they meet those. Sorry, guys. So, and I have talked fast. Is there any questions before I move on? No? Excellent. It all makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm enjoying it.
Oh, thank you, Susan. The other two are busy thinking at this point. I could see faces.
Well, for me, I'm looking at it from a TAFE perspective. And the way that we are to provide evidence in the workplace now has all changed, and we can't use third-party reports anymore. We have to have a more robust assessment process, and I'm thinking that somehow this could be useful for us in a vet context. So, yeah,
that's good. Portfolios, as you say, are well, as we've seen, are not just for our students, they're for us, but they're for any context in learning. As a professional, you may have to keep some form of portfolio to show your own professional development, any professional development opportunities that you do, all that sort of stuff, or even career development. How do I move to the next step? How do I show that I can work at that higher level? What are those things? And everything that we put into our portfolio, and certainly from any context, if we're going for a promotion, saying it's our own portfolio, well, then we've collected evidence along the way that we can then just pull out and put into our promotion application. Or for a student, it's about saying, okay, that selection criteria I want in the job I want to go for, oh, I know how to, I've got evidence of that selection criteria, it's here. So it gives that evidence back, and it's recorded in that way that they can pull it out again. But yeah, any environment where you've got to be keeping a record of something and development over time, a portfolio would be useful for.
And that's not something that we would use. So students or any community service worker going then out into the community sector don't usually have a portfolio per se, but it's something new, and it probably would be, I know as a manager within a community service organisation, if I had somebody, employee come to me with a portfolio, I would be quite interested. So it would definitely make them stand out. So it's a totally new concept for me. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you, Jodie. All right, so where can you go to get help? Of course, you've got all us educational developers in learning and teaching services. So there's Mari, Nadine, myself. At this point, we're down 2 people because our boys just seconded off into another role for a couple of years. But so yeah, there's the 3 of us there, which can help you with in looking at how to implement in your unit or across your course. And of course, you've got your Deputy Deans Learning and Teaching, so hopefully they should be able to help you, or heads of course, if you're looking at that sort of stuff. So, resources, my only 2 resources. We haven't got anything internal at the moment, but these 2 documents that I found. So one is that book, and I did manage to be able to find a link for actually downloading the book. Imagine that. All 400 and something odd pages. And the other one is a journal article by the same author in the Interdisciplinary Journal of E-Learning. So they're 2 very good resources in looking around journal portfolios, how they're used, those sorts of bits and pieces. So that's all of my slides. And I did talk fast. Any other questions?
Sherre, I've got I guess a question is, one of the things that's important for us in sociology is to get our first year students to think critically and to reflect on their own views and values, to understand where they've come from, the kind of history and the cultural aspects, and how, I guess, how they can actually foster a more inclusive and broader understanding, and drawing theory into their thinking to understand the theoretical connection. And I think e-portfolios is probably something that would be very useful, particularly because we can connect it with weekly tutorials, and the students will be able to use the e-portfolios as an assessment, but actually come to the tutorials and have them being directly related to them completing their e-portfolio components relevant to that weekly topic. And so I think it's really beneficial because, especially in sociology, students perhaps may not fully appreciate how they've developed their thinking skills and their understanding of society and social groups in society, because they perhaps don't have that process to reflect back on how they were thinking in week 1 and week 2, and how that's changed over the course of that 12 weeks. And it'd be really nice, I think, to be able to develop something like this, especially a first year unit.
Yeah, definitely it would be very good for that purpose. It's something too that it's hard to pick up even as academics if you're not used to doing it, is reflecting. It's taking a moment to sit and reflect and think about the situation. Why did I do something like that? What led me to that decision? All of those sorts of things are things that we don't do naturally. Well, I know I don't. But it's a very good skill to develop in moving forward, because it helps us understand ourselves and also the situations that we might face in the future.
Excuse me, Sherre.
Yep.
Susan, just a question for you. If you were going to look at it for something like that in that reflection, and this is also for you, Sherre, I suppose too, but when you're looking at the different artefacts, what would you think would you use? Would you have your students maybe do like a quick podcast or something on that for their reflection of themselves, or how would you then record that?
I
how would they then do that? What would be the best way?
I probably wouldn't get them to develop any video files of themselves, but what I'd probably do is direct them to look at particularly videos or different podcasts, and comment and reflect on images. So running it in parallel with a tutorial session, I would essentially perhaps develop a tutorial workbook that would guide them through some thinking processes and activities, which would then allow them to go back to their e-portfolios and work on those, having had discussions around the topic areas in the tutorial and done some exercises and been able to have a group reflecting process occur. And that way they can learn from their peers, their other students, and also they can learn through that student lecturer interaction as well. I think the really nice thing about the e-portfolios is that it is very diverse, and so you can perhaps get them to certainly import images and to illustrate points that they want to express. And also maybe even get them to look at case studies and develop little case studies on areas that are of particular interest to them, which is relevant to how they meet those learning outcomes.
Yes, I'm aware one of the Indigenous academic in the office next to me, she teaches into TEP, so that's the tertiary entrance program for the Indigenous students, so the enabling program. In one of her subjects, she gets them to do a portfolio and they have to answer a question. And for the week, and it's about getting them to think about their heroes. Why are they heroes? What benefit? What are they learning from those people? Another question she has them answer is, what do you think a university should look like? So, because this is preparing them for university. So it's getting them to understand and consider their Aboriginality and or Torres Strait Islander cultures, and how that links or may overlap with the Western culture in which they move into as part of a university. So it can be used in lots of different ways just for that development and rethinking aspect of understanding who you are and how the world might work with you or against you or impact over things that you feel are very important to you.
Yeah, and Sherre, I think the other thing is that just because the focus on contract cheating, it's making me think that this is a very much more individualised, personalised approach to an assessment, which makes it a lot more harder for somebody outside of the unit to complete it. Also be able to track who attends those tutorials and who views any tutorial recordings. So I think it's this whole e-portfolio offers a lot of opportunities here, and it's really, I really want to be able to perhaps see a couple of examples of them and get a better idea so that I can share that with students and develop up my own e-portfolio assessment and do it in parallel with our weekly tutorials and develop up a tutorial workbook. And I think that would be great because you can also change it each year by just, tweaking it around different topical issues. I mean, this is great for sociology. And there's a wealth of different types of material out there, whether it's YouTube or whether it's on SBS, different episodes of, say, things like Insight that really delve into some of those kind of social issues in society. So I think this is a great tool for our learning.
Thank you, Susan. Mina's busy there nodding her head to everything that's being said. Do you want to add anything, Mina?
Not at the moment, Sherre. I'm just trying to, because I'm thinking of including e-portfolios in my units I'm coordinating. This week, I've also started hosting webinars for my courses, for my units, not courses, for units. And I would like to put those, those artifacts in my e-portfolio so that, when I'm talking about assessments or I'm talking about how this unit relates to other courses or what industry requires, when you're doing this, the integration of the unit I teach to the, what industry is expecting, those kind of things. This is what I'm thinking of course, putting in my e-portfolio. So I was thinking that how, it was just introductory thing to, see how it can be used and what all we can use, so that we don't want to, throw too many informations to our students, because then they don't see any. This is what my observation is. If we are sending them very long emails, they hardly read it. If we are sending them just punch points, lines, which really, make sense and they act onto it, is what I'm looking for. So that's what, I'm thinking of at this moment.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. I think it's about, yep, go on.
Sorry, Sherre. I just wanted to know if there is actually any examples of what one would look like.
I'd have to have a scout around, see if I can find some. I was at conference and they mentioned a couple of sites, so I'll go have a look at those and see if they come up with some examples in those. See if they're good enough to share. But I have that down as a to-do action to see if I can find some examples.
Sherre, I think one of the other things that I would use the e-portfolio for, and this would be something that I guess may or may not be part of an assessment, part of the assessed part of the assessment, and that's getting students to write a couple of sentences about their journey through the unit, what they found challenging, what they didn't like, and why they didn't like it, what they did like, what they enjoyed, what motivated them to go the extra mile to actually investigate something. And I think that will provide a much richer insight from the student than our current evaluation, push the red button. I think this is done very much focused on the student and their journey, and it's less of a, evaluate me kind of thing. And hopefully that would enable them to actually maybe have a more positive perspective on how that 12 months has unfolded for them.
Will it be anonymous?
Sorry?
Will that evaluation be anonymous when they're writing in their e-portfolios?
Oh.
Will that be, because that might create, either their, well, yes.
But if you're not actually asking after the evaluation of the course per se, or the teachers of it, you're asking them those questions to get them think about their own learning journey and development. So if there was something you didn't like in a unit, well, what was it and how did it impact you? What did you do to, what strategies did you use to get around that?
Yeah, but sometimes
it's about throwing it back around them. So the other bit, in all our discussions, the challenge is going to be getting the students to see the benefit of this, of a portfolio and what it can do for them as their growth from stepping into university and going out as a graduate and then continuing on through career development. It's something that they probably don't normally do. So you could find there's certainly you'll find a fair amount of resistance. But if we can get the first years or whatever, the sooner we get them started on that journey and developing those, by the time they get a couple of years in, it should just be automatic and they're not resistant in the same way as they may have been when they started. So in moving to a portfolio, it's about just remembering we're likely to get some resistance, because we're actually really asking them to do something that they don't do normally, but it's quite challenging and maybe confronting for them as well to be thinking about themselves as learners.
And I can imagine it's going to be difficult for first year students because many of them are direct entry from high school, and they're probably more focused on the here and the now and maybe what's happening in a month's time and things like that. And they maybe don't reflect back as more mature age individuals would. So I think it's a good skill for them to start thinking about doing and making them realise it's important for their own personal development and satisfaction in life. And certainly I think I'm going to have to develop up resources around those steps to do the e-portfolio, just like you would if it was how do you write an essay for your assignment. I think, you're going to have those resources and that kind of scaffolding and that support to get them through that. And that's probably why if you are able to find any examples of an e-portfolio that may be useful for, say, a sociology student, that'd be great. And I'll certainly try and have a look through the literature for that as well.
Yeah, I will see what I can find for you guys, and I'll let you know around that. Any other questions, comments?
I've got another question. So at the start you mentioned that Mari will be doing a session on Mahara.
Yes.
And you said Mahara is the e-portfolio software.
Yes.
So we will need to understand how to use Mahara then.
Yes.
So that's pretty important.
Because you're going to have to show your students how to use it. Yes. Yeah. So Mahara has been around for quite a while. Certainly the university, when I started at the university, they had Mahara. But they've recently updated it. It's a bit more user-friendly now than what it was. So Mari will walk through that sort of stuff when she's doing that session on the 8th of August at 1 to 2. So that's the other half of this. So I've just given the reasons why we should be looking at this. The other part of it is the technology, the software itself, which we need to be using and how we might use it and how it works so we can help our students with that. So, and of course students could create their own if they wanted to do a WordPress site or whatever else, but it's up to you and them as to what you see as the most relevant option for a portfolio. Yeah.
So are you able to provide the link to your recording when it's completed and processed? Because I'd really like to share what you've covered today with Shane Hopkinson, my colleague.
Yep.
He's away at the moment.
Yeah, I'll make the recording available. I'll find a spot for it, and I'll let you know where it is. From there. Alrighty, Ash, you joined us slightly late. We're sort of, I do move a bit quick, so we're on the tail end. I have recorded this, so I will make that recording available. Did you have any specific questions around e-portfolios that you were?
No, thanks for that. Actually, in engineering, in many of our PBL units, our students, they prepare a portfolio, but they are not using any sort of software or anything like that. So they're just compiling it in Microsoft Word and submitting it. But e-portfolio is something definitely important for them to be familiar with and perhaps start to use it. And then that was my motivation mainly to come and attend the session. Really be keen to look at the slide and some of the other resources that you have shared just to get a better understanding by myself. And I look forward to seeing the other presentation you mentioned about the software Mahara. And is there any chance that there's something recorded from the previous sessions that on Mahara that we can access?
I'm not sure whether Mari did record the previous one. I'd have to. She's on holidays, so
okay, that's okay. No rush.
I'll have to ask her when she gets back.
All right.
But I'll make sure she does record her next one.
Excellent. Thank you so much for it.
All right. That's fine. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll leave you guys. You're probably still scoffing down lunch somewhere along the line. An extra half hour in our days is always handy. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'll get the slides out to you, and I'll let you know where the recording is, and I'll have a look for some portfolios and give you those links as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sherre.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.